Hello, everybody, and welcome back, Mr. Matthew Hanks. He is back with us in this co-host revolving program that we've got every month. So he has been with us once before, and he is back with us again for, I think, is this your second rotation, right?
Third.
Oh, it's your third already.
It's our third time.
That's
together.
cool because I'm getting used to people now, and I could tell that we have because it's the months are bleeding together with who's been here. So that's pretty cool. So welcome everybody to Through with Therapist Eyes. I'm Chris Gazdick, a mental health and substance abuse therapist. I have that book still out, Re-Understanding Emotions and Becoming Your Best Self. We welcome you to this podcast where you find personal insights from a therapist directly to your own home and personal time in your car. I like to say this is through the lens of a therapist, but not the delivery of therapy services in any way. And we are doing a lot of new things. I don't know if you've caught up with that, Matthew. We've got these Facebook Live cameras going, and what did we have any of this when you were here last?
No, I think Neil was trying to hold a phone up or something. Maybe couldn't get a signal through.
Nice.
So we were having challenges with it. So you've definitely taken a step forward since the last time.
That's cool. Yeah. We are at contact@throughwiththerapisteyes.com. That's for questions, for interaction, Spotify, LinkedIn, Apple iTunes. We're getting kind of everywhere, man. It's kind of been fun. So check us out. This is the human emotional experience. We do endeavor to figure this thing out together. Man, I am throwing you in the fire. I'm sorry about that, man, because we got a meaty, what did I call it, a psychologically meaty topic tonight, man.
I think I just should have stayed on that road trip.
You did take an awesome road trip.
Yeah, I took January off, but I should have just kept driving, said, hey, I'll meet you in March. Let somebody else cover implicit bias. What a topic.
Implicit bias.
Yeah.
Why do we believe what we believe? Yeah. Before I forget, where do they find you? How do they find you? You are a awesome real estate agent in this area, man. You are all local. And I wondered, can you do national in any way?
Yeah. No, I have business partners all over the country, really.
Yeah. You've kind of grown yourself a little bit, sir.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can find me at MatthewHanks.com. That's all my connections to my social media channels. But we have business partners. I'm a part of a larger real estate firm known as EXP Realty, and I have business partners all over the country and really around the world. Yeah. We can help people with their real estate needs no matter where they are. Yeah. So I encourage them to reach out to me, and we'll respond there and find out what the need is and be able to help them.
And it's not just a total plug, man. I've come to know this guy. He's one of the members of our mastermind group, cares about what he does. I gushed on you, I think, when you were here before. Do I have to do that every time?
No.
You're amazing at what you do, though.
I appreciate that.
I feel desire to do that.
Yeah.
He really does care, guys, about what your real estate needs are, selling and buying and everything.
Yeah, we're focused a lot right now on selling.
I bet.
There's never been a better time to sell a house.
Hot.
Yeah, ever.
I cannot believe the prices in the housing market that I see blowing around the market. I mean, it's just...
Well, we anticipate interest rates to increase multiple times this year.
They're coming.
And the demand is already high.
Yeah.
And so that's just makes it a really good time to sell a house.
Be proud of me, man. I'm refinancing as we speak.
Good for you.
Yeah, I am. That's not a fun process, though. That kind of sucks. All right, so this is a cool topic that we're banging into tonight, and I actually kind of wanted to do this for a while. I guess it just spun out into different things that we've done since, because I actually I caught a Science Versus podcast that I really enjoyed because the show, it was actually at a time when it was really a hot button issue with Black Lives Matter and all of the race relations that were going on and policing and all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna mention it and weave that in, but this is actually a broader perspective on implicit bias. So in the show notes, you're gonna see the Science Versus that I'm talking about. I just re-listened to it this morning, and actually it caused me to ad hoc the end part where we're going to talk about how to avoid the effects of implicit bias, because, man, this affects us like a lot. And policing is just one example of how that operates. Mm-hmm. So you kind of had an interesting perspective, I think, when you said what is implicit bias. I mean, it's funny because you were like, dude, I don't know what are we going to say? How do we go with this?
Yeah.
But you were right on point when you were talking about Shapiro. So what did you hear with that?
Well,
when
I think
you connected?
the whole premise of implicit bias is that we're all behaving based off of feelings and our belief system,
Yeah.
and we don't even realize it.
Right.
So isn't that where we are with implicit bias?
It's
That we're all-
amazing, right? Like, why do we believe what we believe is I think, a pretty important question and a dynamic one. And I really, listening to this one, guys, and I actually laced it pretty good with previous episodes that we did because if this is an interesting topic to you, you're going to want to check out some of those other episodes that we did and jump deep into some of this stuff, because we're going to talk a little bit about the unconscious mind, what the mind is, how implicit bias works, specific examples with like parenting and marriage, and we'll mention policing and all, and then what to do about it. So this is like a psychological deep dive, man. This is it is exactly what you kind of just touched on.
Well, I will defer to you as the expert on it. I'm certainly no therapist.
And I'm even going to point out, as you say that, I don't know how many experts there really are on this. Can I make that bold statement? Because when you start talking about the subconscious mind, one of the shows we did, Dr. Ted Spickler taught us a lot about tacitly learning something. And he is really, like, he's an authority. He's retired now, and he's worked with this stuff all of his career in the deep edges of psychology. And to hear him talk about the subconsciousness and what that was, it was really, like, I could have just talked to him for hours. As a matter of fact, I have, because I've had the privilege of hanging out with him a couple times. It's deep, and I don't think we understand it. This subconsciousness and the implicit reality in how it affects what we believe. So I guess I'm an expert, Matthew, but this is a tough topic to really get into that I think we're all really learning about. So I'm going to do my best is what I'm going to say to people. So let's look at, usually we do definitions and stuff, but this is one that we want to pay attention to from the get-go so we know what we're talking about, because I'm going to make the clear statement that your implicit bias drives really why you believe what you believe. And that goes throughout your entire life's development. How's that for like an overwhelming thought? Everything you've experienced, everything you've been through is tracked by your subconscious mind and enters into the implicit nature of what your belief system, value system, perceptions are driven by. Whew. Okay, implicit bias definition. The implicit bias is also called unconscious bias, is how people refer to it. And it refers to the attitudes and beliefs that are outside of our consciousness of awareness and control. Okay? There's a very important distinction that I want us to be able to get from the get-go. And that is what we just said being implicit, there's also explicit. Okay? And there's a variation here. So implicit, the word itself, means implied through not plainly expressed explicit, or implied though not plainly expressed. That's what implicit is. And explicit is stated clearly and in detail, leaving no room for confusion or doubt. So what that means is when you're implicitly engaged in thought, when you're implicitly engaged in behavior even and whatnot, right? It's not plain. It's not really in clear black and white concrete terms. It's almost experienced, implied, perceived. And then the explicit stuff is literally what our cognition in our frontal cortex does. So you explicitly believe something by what you think, what you say, what your cognition is doing. But this is where we get into the really weird world of it being implicitly driven. You're not thinking about it. And this is a crucial point to understand this whole conversation that we're going to have. When something is implicitly understood or implicitly believed, it's just like automatic. It's not in your consciousness with what we're talking about. You just know what you know, right? Neil, I was curious. You could just give me a head shake and whatnot. When I was doing this show prep, I swear we recently did an episode on core beliefs. Do you remember that? Yeah, you remember that too. See if you can figure out where we did that, because I straight up didn't see it. Because if you listen to this one, you want to go back to that one when we talked about core beliefs. And because we took a deep dive on that and how that goes. All of that stuff is really this implicit reality that we're diving into tonight. So hopefully he'll find that, because I literally couldn't find it. I just know we talked about it. So if we're going to go with this topic, we have to look at the subconsciousness. Okay. So I'm curious from a lay perspective outside as a real estate agent. That's a little bit more of a topic that I think you could probably bite your teeth into. And I'm curious to gauge what people might be thinking about with their subconsciousness, with what you see or understand about that. So what is subconsciousness? What is that, for instance? And real quick, you got it already? Holy cow, I don't know how I didn't see that. Okay, okay. It's episode 163, and the title of it is The Assumptions We Live By. And I stand corrected. I figured that out when I did the show prep. At first I didn't, but yeah, got it. So what's subconsciousness? What does that mean to you?
I think it's when I think about it, it's just the recesses of our minds that there's information there and we can't necessarily recall it. So it's just subconscious, not the things we think about, we dwell on, but it's, the mind is so much more powerful than what we often give it credit for, the things we think and do. But subconscious is maybe memories that are there that you can't recollect, information that's there that you're not thinking about day to day.
Yeah, I love that statement right there. Say that again.
The information that is, if it's not being like if it's a computer and the information is there, it's written on the hard drive somewhere, but you're not able to access it.
It's
like an external storage device that you're not accessing.
It is kind of an external storage device that I like a lot. It's confusing, right? Because it's all this information that we feel like we could never retain with our cognition and our active short-term and long-term memory. It's almost, I love that metaphor. It's that terabyte external hard drive that you just dump everything on. Pictures from 1923 and poems and sayings.
But not even intentionally, though. All that information.
And it happens with everything. It's like everything you've ever typed in your computer is on this storage device.
Yeah.
Think about how scary that is, first of all, kind of holy cow, right? You couldn't be more right. So when we talk about the subconsciousness, like hypnosis is a thing that gets into that. Okay, so I did a training with Neil Newfield. Awesome, Neil. I love him. He was one of my best professors, and he challenged us the most. He did a seminar for us on hypnosis. Now, I understand hypnosis. I don't use it in my practice, and a lot of people have a lot of questions on how hypnosis goes and what it does. And it has efficacy in treatment world. It's really good for memory recall, all this smoking cessation stuff. People are probably going to hate me in my field, but I don't. It's got some weird fun things that people do with it, but it's really best for like memory recall. But it's so powerful when you get into a trance state in hypnosis, you're literally accessing that entire hard drive. Like your subconscious knows, for instance, how many exact steps were in your childhood home. It counted it. You can give me that number when you're dealing with your subconsciousness. Do you have a childhood home with steps?
You're talking about steps up into the house?
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, I did too.
I'm not going to be hypnotized as part of this.
I'm not doing it.
Okay.
No, I'm not doing it. But we could do it when the cameras go off. How about that? That'd be fun. I could try it. Anyway.
I was on stage once in college to be hypnotized, and it didn't happen. There was they brought people out of the audience to be hypnotized, and it didn't happen.
For you? You were one of the chosen people? Really? Okay, well, that's interesting.
But they had probably 10 or 15 people that they brought up, and but some were hypnotized through what the
guy did,
the guy did, and some were not. And they said those who are not, go ahead and have a seat again, and then just watch the show, because the things that they had them do and say and recollect, whatever the case was.
What's an interesting thing
incredible.
about hypnosis, people will kind of have some beliefs, for instance, that, like I can hypnotize you and make you do something that you wouldn't do. Is one of the things Neil taught us that day. Sorry, Dr. Newfield, I should say, right? You can't do that. Like, your subconsciousness is still like you, and that's a good point to make. Like, it's still what you believe, what you practice, what you operate from. You cannot force somebody mystically into doing something that they otherwise wouldn't normally do. And so you were probably that day just not in the mindset and not in a trusting state with that guy. I'm in front of these people and I don't want to do stuff, and you won't be hypnotized then. It's not like somebody can wiggle a wand and do something weird.
There were several that were.
Oh, yeah.
I was amazed.
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything like that in my
life.
life.
It is amazing. So what did you see? How did they? What are some of the things you saw? I'm sure everyone in the audience are listening.
Oh, he could have them quack like a duck. I mean, you could just tell that they were just under total control of the guy that had them hypnotized.
Yeah,
they could have them do anything, sound like a dog, walk on all fours, whatever he had them do, they would do it.
He was not in control. He was not in control.
And it certainly seemed that way as part of the show. He came in.
What happens is people are willing to demonstrate the power and the process of hypnosis. If they weren't, you weren't, so you can't be. But they'll have fun. Usually, it's those personalities. They're fun personalities. They're outgoing or whatever. I'm not saying you're not, but they know subconsciously what's going on. But their inhibitions in our cognition, explicit inhibitions, right? They're out to lunch.
So does this have any relation to, let's say I'm being under the influence of alcohol, your inhibitions go away?
That's a good question.
Because you say, the excuse of, well, I was intoxicated, I wasn't myself.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, is it a similar...
You saw the wonder look on my face. If you go to the Facebook Live, you'll see my wonder look.
Because you'll hear people say, well, no, it's not
thing.
much of an excuse that you were just intoxicated, because you're still you.
That's what we're arriving at. You're still you under hypnosis. You're still you in your subconsciousness. And that inhibition loss probably is more about, dropping the insecurities, and being intoxicated makes you euphoric. And so you're in an altered state of exploding dopamine and this type of thing. So all of that probably is the bigger piece. That's my landing spot. But my quandary really is, again, going back to, I'm going to be the best expert I could be here today, but this is out of the box thinking a little bit, because I don't think we truly understand the subconscious state. And again, this impacts our whole conversation tonight. So you might be kind of triggering yourself to access some of those components that otherwise you kind of don't realize, but suppress and compartmentalize and fragment, because you don't want to feel those feelings or do those things or have the responsibilities that you have. So I'd be curious if somebody smarter than me can answer that question. We might be tapping a little bit into that domain, but we might not too. I'm actually not sure, right? But that's an excellent question, honestly. And so, and along with those realities, like you've heard of repression before, probably, right? Psychological repression, that state with trauma. Do you know what that refers to?
Certain areas of the brain that are just turned off because of pain, like a scar?
Yes, sort of. Okay, because like I told you before the mics came on, you're going to really help me tune into where people might be with this meaty stuff. When you go through trauma, it's so intense sometimes. Your uncle was inappropriate with you from age 5 to 7 or whatever, and you're just bloop. It's the memory's not there. Mm-hmm. It's tapped out. That's repression. but it's absolutely fully alive in your subconsciousness.
Still there.
It's very much on that hard drive. Now, interestingly, back to the alcohol thing, actually when you black out, that's when you drink too much and you lose memory. That actually is tapping out of your subconsciousness. People have gone through hypnosis to gain memory from blackout periods like with alcoholism, and it's actually not there. It's not on the hard drive. So alcohol probably turns off even the subconsciousness for that limited period of time. But before that gets turned off with alcohol, I bet we're playing around with it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But that's how powerful the brain can be. This is such a terrible event. It's not even in my explicit thinking process because I don't even remember that it happened. And I've seen that in my therapy office a lot. And when people start getting well emotionally, starting to handle their emotions, their memories will come back. It's one of the reasons why I don't use hypnosis in my work.
Isn't that just part of the self-preservation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you get hurt and the pain is so great that you don't even feel the pain.
Absolutely.
It's like you just...
It's exactly the same thing. Our brains are amazing organs that do this. It just takes over because it's just too much. Boy, we are going into this. I told you I might make this a part 1 and part 2.
It's your show.
Neil, you think about it and you give me a vote because this is going to be a lot to squeeze in, and we might we might do that. Let's apply this a little bit. Okay, let's apply this. So, do we have a decent understanding of implicit versus explicit? The bias that our consciousness goes in with the subconsciousness, creating the implicit bias. I mean, do we have a good understanding of that?
Yes, it's the belief system that you operate by. So it's what makes you operate the way you do, the actions that you do,
the automatic
decisions
processing.
that you make.
Yeah. This is a good bit of why we believe what we believe. That's the title. Okay, let's apply this to a few different areas. See how this goes. All right? So, marriage, right? You've kind of heard me talk about the EFT model, how marriage works, some of the cycles. Do you remember any of that?
Can you
Absolutely. Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
Because this has been on the show before, and this is episode 11 and 101. I refer a lot of my clients to this stuff. Here's the elevator version, right? So we learned through John Gottman's material and his research the patterns that marriage couples go through, right? They got wired up, and he just observed people talking. And he observed like different tendencies that people had, and he layered that back to one of two very specific insecurities that we operate by. One is engulfment, the other is abandonment, right? And engulfment people develop, if you will, almost an implicit fear. Okay, that's a little foreshadowing here. They develop a explicit fear as well with being controlled or being criticized. So engulfment people will want to develop emotional safety, so they put up walls, back off, create space. They're internalized. They're not really outward with their emotion, right? The abandonment people on the other side are concerned more with the insecurity that we probably more identify with, being alone, not being valued, not being accepted, and this type of thing. So they'll try to gain emotional safety by pursuing and getting close and talking and externalizing and connecting. That's the side that I'm definitely on. I understand that and openly share that, right? So you have three potential combinations in marriage. You'll have two people from an engulfment where you both back off to gain emotional safety, and you're kind of in your own world. It's very rare, but it happens. You can also have two abandonment people. They're just, crashing and talking. It's just love fest when it's good and a cry. We used to call this, I believe, a high conflict marriage, right? An overwhelming majority of the time, you have one person who pulls back to gain safety when they're triggered, and the other person pursues and pushes into the world. They can run the person over, right? So this is the back and forth that couples will get into, okay? Is that the good refresher?
I like
kind of pull your brain back into it?
It does.
So I foreshadowed a little bit. Let's think about this. How does the implicit biasness that we might have with those fears play out when you're arguing, when you got that energy pump up. Like, what do? Want to get away from the fight? Do you want to go in at it? Do you pursue or do you withdraw? And how does that operate, right? Think of the budget fights or the edginess that you get in marriage and these types of things. You know how that works? See how that, and it can be intense. Sometimes it can be more mild, The thing I want to get your brains to think about is this implicit bias really applies itself when your mind kind of goes offline. Like, you're no longer in cognition. You're no longer explicitly thinking about what to say or what to do, what you believe, what you value. You're thrown in to an implicit bias. If it's engulfment, they're trying to control me. They're running me over. They're telling me what to do. They're treating me like a child. I hear these things in my office, right? Or the abandonment, implicitly, you just experience it. You're no longer thinking. Your thinker's offline. Frontal cortex is kind of freaked out, frazzled. It's been electrified, and other pieces jump in, implicitly bias to, you don't give a rip about me. You don't care what I'm saying. You might fully leave me. I'm like alone in this world, and you don't even care, right? Can you imagine some of the things that friends or yourself or in marriage, these moments that happen? Can you see what I'm trying to say?
I've always felt like it was just based off of experiences or something that's happened in the past, or there's a fear that they have they're trying to avoid that's causing them to behave the way they are, say the things they do.
Yeah.
That maybe it's implicit bias.
Yeah.
Based on their past experiences.
Yeah. Have you, I don't know about you, but have you said stuff in the middle of an argument with your spouse that you kind of like say, think back, what did I say?
Yeah. Where'd that come from?
Where did that even, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Stuff just rips.
Yeah. Or something just really troubles you, bothers you. Like, why does that bother me?
Yeah. You can explicitly think, I'm not worried about you leaving me. I get this abandonment stuff, but we're married. We're newlyweds. It's all good. Implicitly, I'm telling you, y'all, you think about this. Your subconscious is rattling. That's why you're so heated. That's why you're so worked up. Implicitly, you're a little child on an island and your wife is going to leave.
Yeah.
Or you're absolutely what you think you're a child, and from an engulfment perspective, your husband is controlling you and they're going to run you over. And you're not even implicitly aware of it. That is huge when we are doing couples counseling and how this biasness applies to how you're going to operate. And here's a question for you to ponder. How do you operate in those moments when that shit has just taken over yourself? That's a question.
Well, I think
what do you do?
Well, the first thing is to recognize it, because I'm sure there's couples that you sit down with, they've never heard of distance or pursuer, which is why you have those episodes 11 and 101 memorized.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't have to ask Neil, what was that we referenced? But you've done the shows about it. They can go back and listen to it. And then once you realize that there is such a thing as distance or pursuers, probably a lot of couples that hear say, hey, well, maybe we're not so oddball as a couple. And this is things that the average couple probably is up against.
It is universal. I'll put that as a major statement. Right?
So identifying that there is a problem and what the problem is, that's our first step.
It is. You're on point. Absolutely.
So once we realize, because then you can call it out. Then you, once you realize what it is that you're up against, then you can make a plan together to go to combat it.
one of the first steps I oftentimes do in couples counseling now is go through that little elevator version that I just did, and then we go into it and understand it. First of all, here's the thought that occurs to me in real time. Do you know how many times, Matthew, people are like, well, I don't know. I'm not sure which one I am. Here's what I hear. I do both. I do both of those things. I hear that all the time. That's your explicit mind, cognition, thinking through this, wanting to kind of believe what you believe about yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Your implicit bias is absolutely exploding in those moments. And so it occurs to me, it's really fascinating. Honestly, that's a new thought that I just connected. Yeah. People don't know what they do. They really don't know what they do. And I see this so clearly. It's fascinating to me when I'm meeting with people and being with people and just observing things. And I hate this. I don't therapize my family and friends and all, but I almost can't help but seeing it now. Sometimes
yeah, you do.
now.
You can't help but do it.
After 1995 to now, it's gotten more difficult. I hate that actually about myself, to be honest with you. I don't want to do that. And I purposely turn that off. Anybody who knows me, I truly, truly do purposely turn that off a lot. Yeah. But this is one that I see so clearly. It's amazing to me that people don't know. But I'm telling you, oftentimes.
Well, I can imagine that being one of the things that helps the most is that you make them aware of it, and then you make it point it out.
And just it's like amazing when they begin making connections. They begin seeing, and we'll have conversations and in a session, and I'll point out, like, where did that come from? What did you just say there? And what did that mean to you? And how does that work? And they go backtrack that, and they're like, holy crap, that means I want freaking space. I put up walls, and I'm engulfed, and I'm actually, who knew, man? Like, I'm afraid that you're going to control me and put me in a space I don't want to be in.
But once it manifests, that's the explicit side, right? You're able to point to it and say, that behavior or that action or that thing you said, now we're talking manifestations, explicit.
Yes. It's clear. It's concrete.
That's external, that you can see, that you can recognize, you could film it.
Now we can execute intervention. Yes. It is so awesome when I'm walking with people, and this happens in individual therapy kind of all the time. These are some of the aha moments. You know, there was that show that we talked about. I think that Casey did that show with me. Look at the assumptions that we live by. Those are those core beliefs and those aha moments where you can actually bring that out of your subconsciousness, out of your implicit bias, and be able to put that in your immediate real-time awareness. However, how easy do you think that is to do?
It's probably one of the more challenging things.
Listen, I'll out myself. Anybody that knows me personally, you'll probably laugh now. You think I'm good at doing that? No, man. When I get worked up, it's offline, man. Stuff is just being experienced and felt. I'd like to think I'm in management control of that in the moment, but dude, come on. Stuff is taken over, and my thinker's offline, and I'm just now a human being in the middle of this. Mm-hmm. This is hard. Mm-hmm. This is super, super hard to really be able to try to bring that out in the moment. But it is kind of possible to identify it probably after the fact and get out of it quicker. That's really manageable. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not going to stop it, though. I tell people the goal of therapy is not to stop this process from happening. We can't. I don't think we can.
Yeah.
It's identifying it quicker. And quicker might mean like, you know, tomorrow or 5 hours from now when you've calmed down. And here's a key word that's also foreshadowing. De-escalated yourself. When you de-escalate yourself, now you're like able to kind of maybe try to pull those things together and think, what do I really want to do here? Because I don't want my implicit bias to operate and be in charge. Because when my implicit bias is in charge, and I'm taking actions with you, my spouse, let's just say that ain't a good look. It's not a good look.
I can imagine it wouldn't be.
Let's apply this to another area. There's another segment. A lot of the same thing happens when we're dealing with our kids. So let me see where your brain is and kind of understanding this and apply this to kids and parenting. I mean, what happens when we're engaged with our kids when they've done what they do, right?
Well, I think it
just put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah.
Big pause. What do I do with this, right?
Yeah. Well, parenting is not for cowards, and you don't have any preparation for it. It's one of those things that there's no practice. There's no opportunity to try it, get it wrong, fail, get it right, and then have kids. So you're kind of on the job training. And I think one of the ways it might manifest is if you're too strict on your kids because you have fears.
Perfect
of
example.
What they're going to end up being, or I don't want you to end up in jail, or I don't want you to be a junkie. Right. So you've got a legit concern, a fear. So that's implicitly causing you to be just overly strict day to day.
In a way, it's because I care so much and I'm so fearful, probably more than any ways in my life. I'd have to really think about that statement. I guess that's why I said probably. When I'm dealing with sometimes these kid issues with my children, dude, I lose my ever-loving mind. I mean, I hate to admit that, but I'm not always very much in control when I'm panicked about what you've done or what you're doing and what I see. It feels like you're headed 75 miles an hour directly 500 feet away from a brick wall. And I don't know, some stuff just takes over. And I mean, I am blasting out. I'm not really explicitly making decisions at that point, when I'm parenting. Mm-hmm. That's a terrible admission, but I believe in being genuine on the show. So,
well, it's reality.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably a lot of what many parents face, maybe all parents face. We care about our kids so much. That's where superhuman strength starts coming in. You hear stories.
Yes.
A mother pick up a car.
Literally.
Things take over.
Literally.
And it's not, what do you say, front of mind?
You ain't thinking when you're picking up that car, I guarantee you that.
She's not feeling any pain.
My lower back can't handle this. I've already stretched doing yoga last week. I can't.
No, absolutely not. Or the dad that's going to run in a burning building to save a child. He's going into sudden death.
Yeah.
To save a child, you're not thinking. That's just things that are implicit, subconscious. It just takes over.
And how amazing our bodies are, literally. I love using that example of picking up a car. And that has happened, y'all. Google that crap, because we're not making something up or just making a little example of something. Mm-hmm. People have done that. Mm-hmm. How do our bodies do that? I mean, we have stuff that's in operation within us. We can enter into a religious conversation with this.
Oh, with a lot of it, certainly.
Right? That there's stuff that's in there that's implicit that we're not even aware of, that's in operation. And I believe that religiously, spiritually, relationally, emotionally, it's powerful. So all the way back in episode I wrote down 15, we talked about love and logic. I got no time to go through that, but love and logic is a process of parenting where it'll change your perspective. It'll turn you upside down in how you operate, because it directly challenges some of the behavior choices you've chosen to teach life lessons to your kid, and makes you think completely differently about that relationship and how to go about it. Mm-hmm. And what I would submit to you is, I love the way some of these shows kind of combine together, because I think about these things when I'm doing show prep, guys. Like and I think out of the box and pull, different things together and see how they fit and how they wire in together. And new stuff occurs to me doing that all the time. When you re-understand how you want to have your relationship with your child through something like episodes 15's Love and Logic, you are going into your implicit assumptions, probably about what you learned from your parents. Going back to what you said, right? Probably to what you experienced growing up. Your parents taught you what you're supposed to do as a parent, and you don't even remember what they said. but your subconscious does. Knows exactly the voice intonation. Listen, I'm not making this up or exaggerated. Your subconscious knows the clothes your mama was wearing when she said what she said that drove that thought. Does that blow your brain? It blows my brain apart.
Wasn't it? I don't want to say something here that might not be true, but it seems as though, didn't Elon recently say that the technology has come in where they can access that information
Elon
externally?
Musk? I don't know.
Yes.
Go a little further.
Where that information can be, some of what we're taking in can be recorded externally to computerized equipment.
Holy crap.
That it could be accessed.
He's an amazing thinker and thinks about a lot of this stuff. I'm pretty sure that Elon's very interested in psychology and he thinks about stuff. There are really amazing people that go with this. Neil deGrasse Tyson, you know who he is?
No.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is he's good friends with the science guy. He's an astrophysicist and he's got an amazing brain. Do you know what he said the most amazing newfound frontier for science is? It's not black holes. It's not the Big Bang or understanding supernovas or anything.
The human mind?
Neurology. He said neurology.
Yeah.
Was most interesting to him and the biggest new frontier for science. And I couldn't agree more. Another one to use as an example, traumatic life experiences. Again, I don't have a whole lot of time to describe this, but we've talked about PTSD on the show and what happens with trauma. Scared brain, lost mind, or scared mind, lost brain was a phrase that we talked about where it's offline, your frontal cortex, explicit thought, gone. You're in the middle of trauma. You talked about it with fire and first responders and parents running into the building. That's... Your mind is in control. You're just experiencing that moment. When you enter into a traumatic reality, that's there. And we went deep on the amygdala, what happens with trauma responses, what PTSD responses are. I don't know, it's actually a few episodes. Think about it. When something in today's world reminds you of what you went through, that's implicitly action. That's implicitly organized. That's implicitly in operation. You did some military time. You probably know some guys and understand how some of that works. That makes sense?
Sure.
To you?
Oh, we see it every 4th of July or New Year's Eve, and those fireworks start going off. That stuff will trigger, and it'll take them right back to where they were when they experienced their lives being on the line, and there's no way around it.
That is an implicit bias, right? Your brain subconsciously, implicitly believes you're about to die. That's why you're going for cover. That's why you're not even dramatic. Let's dumb that down a little bit. That's why you feel that little elevated, just a little heart rate increase, just a little bit of a gump.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason for that. Implicitly, you're not thinking, oh, that sounds like the M45 that blew off next to my ear. The first time that I heard it when I went into a real battle. You're not thinking that.
Yeah.
M45, did I say that right?
I'm
Is there an
not sure you
M45? I don't know my guns all super well.
Yeah. It's your show. Just make it up as you go. we knew what you were implying.
Right? That's your implicit understanding of what that bang when the, M80 goes off in the air. Your subconscious is there. Okay, you're seeing this. Parenting, trauma, marriage. We have made a couple of good examples, right? Here's a good takeaway. Dramatic pause, looking into the camera. This affects everyone. Every man, every woman, every child. I'm going to suggest probably every baby. Probably not a newborn baby, because weeks in, you really don't have a whole lot of bias built yet. But even a newborn baby is really beginning. That terabyte hard drive's already starting to be used, man.
Right.
It's already pulling data. It's pulling experiences. It's pulling a lot of crazy things in that you don't have the frontal cortex even developed, which is an interesting thought. Your brain implicitly is already operational way before other sections of your brain are even there. How's that for crazy land?
I think it goes before you're born.
You know what? Neonatal
because-
professionals would probably agree with you. They would probably.
Yeah, I mean, I've
agree with
heard stories where there'll be a song that someone will hear, and they'll have some type of response to that song.
Yeah, you're right.
And they dig
right.
into a little bit something about that, and go back, and it was the song that the mother played
in their womb
while they were still in the womb.
Yeah.
Things like that. So I don't think these things start. I think it starts way before being born.
I think you're probably absolutely right thinking about it. Absolutely, it's an excellent point because there are operational aspects to that, and we're reacting to that.
Voices.
I mean, your baby reacts to you in the womb, right? Women
Certainly.
talk about that all the time.
Of course, not just to the woman either. They could recognize voices, sound waves.
Mm-hmm. Sound waves. The vibrations of what. Listen, I get my mind gets blown when I really start thinking about the science of this stuff, and it's so cool. Again, neurology. It is picking up feel, sight, taste, everything that you hear in the womb. It's all operational.
Yeah.
And going on that terabyte hard drive.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's another segment, and this one gets a little edgy. This is where I want the audience to tune in. I was really kind of impressed with the genesis of this show was actually November 2019, where I was like, oh, that would be really cool. And I actually had to build up my belief that I could talk about this, frankly, and research it and study it. I put a lot of energy into this episode, I'm not going to lie. Because that particular show, it'll be on our show notes and all, and it was really, really cool. Now, this was in a tough time. This was in the throng of the race relations that we had going on. Lots of questions about police shootings, police violence, and all that goes on in that. And I thought they covered it really well. I think I agreed with most everything that they talked about on there, and they had good, solid research backing up kind of the things that they thought about. My point is not to understand that. I'm going to let the show go with what they did. But the parts that they talked about, that they landed on, the most effective component, I'm going to say again, I said it at the top of my show today, actually is going to make me ad hoc what I had actually prepared for dealing with implicit bias. And because they reminded me of the result on what happens to police officers and all of us through parenting, through marriage, through business partnerships. Anytime we get triggered, that we are all affected by this, and very serious actions are taken. When we're committing murder, people do that. Mm-hmm. Stuff takes over. When we're picking up cars and saving our kids, stuff takes over. So it changed my mind a little bit, or added a very important component that I'll talk about here in a minute on what to work. Because, you hear police body cams, you hear, what's the race relays trainings to make people more sensitive to different races? What is that? That was big. I'm just brain farting. Competencies with racial terms. We've developed these trainings and stuff to try to get...
The sensitivity training?
That's it, exactly. Yeah. This is the whole sensitivity training thing that went on. However you feel about that, I don't know. It is absolutely clear to me, and I'll make the statement, they made it on the show, that when we're looking at situations with first responders, when stuff goes awry, probably 100% of the time, Matthew, fear is driving those responses. And what did we say about trauma? What did we say about parenting? What did we say about marriage fights and marriage attachments? Your frontal cortex goes offline. Your implicit bias jumps in place. Your subconscious comes out because it's kill or be killed. Mm-hmm. And you lose control of conscious thinking and decisions. Mm-hmm. That's what happens, with these horrible situations that pop up. I think probably most of the time people aren't trying to do bad. They're not trying to, screw somebody's life up or...
No.
any of those things.
Yeah.
By the way, just with this little segment, please support your police officers and firefighters and people that drive those ambulances. I'll give you another one. Those people that are answering the 911 calls. That is a trauma-filled world, y'all.
Oh.
Trauma-filled world. And I'm afraid, I'll make this bold statement, that to a man and a woman in those situations, oftentimes, what do we say in the beginning of this show? You have to become aware, right? That you have these biases. They don't know. They don't know. Oh, that's cool. I'm not affected. I've got training and I know what I'm doing. They don't know how powerful this is. Just like you didn't really probably realize it before you heard the hopefully good descriptions of this, how in control these implicit biases are right smack in the middle of your bedroom at marriage. This affects all of us, man. I don't think there's anybody that isn't impacted by this. Do I have your brain thinking about some of this?
Sure. No, I think it's one of those that we probably all wonder at one point or another, whether, depending on how deep we go with it, why do we feel the way we feel? Why do we act the way we act? What causes us to make the decisions that we do? Where's the strife coming from at times? And I think anybody that's married probably wonders, why are they doing what they're doing? And the spouse feels the same way about the other. So for us to talk through this and look at it at a way to say, maybe that's helping me understand who I am or who you are or how we interact together.
Yes.
And then that's just on a one-to-one basis, and then it's a group, and it's a neighborhood, and it's a community, and now we're talking cities and states and countries. But it starts just with that, just with that husband and wife scenario.
Now consider the source. You know, Mr. Through a Therapist's Eyes here since 1995, working in psychology and mental health and substance abuse as I have, right? So consider the source. But I'm going to make the statement, when you're talking about racism, mental health is right in the middle of that. Right in the middle of that. When you're talking about police violence, mental health is right in the middle of that. In some religious circles, you have people talking about the demise of the family in the American culture. Guess what? What do you think I believe?
You believe that implicit bias is right at the heart of it.
All of these things. All of these things. Fear and subconsciousness and the implicit bias and the mental health factors, the psychological woo-woo weird stuff, right in the middle of it. I think that's true. Like I said, consider the source. Why wouldn't I think that? But I think I'm being objective about that. And I know, don't send me any hate mail or an email and all this. I know there are a lot of other things kind of going on in the world and in our behavior. I mean, this isn't exclusive, but it's a pretty big chunk of why we have divorce problems. It's a pretty big chunk of what we're talking about with police and first responders. It's a pretty big chunk of what's happening with the absentee fatherism in the 80s we talked about. Remember how that was a big thing? You know, it's a pretty big chunk of divorce and just all of these different factors where your implicit bias pops out. Okay. I made a decision a little bit ago. We are going to do a part 2 on this. I'm going to have easy show prep next week.
Too easy.
I'm going to have easy show prep because I've thought about this a lot.
Well, we've touched on a couple of topics. Is it me next week?
Oh, yeah. You're this month.
The whole month?
The whole month, I hope. Unless we have to reschedule.
So I've got to go deep on implicit bias. It'll give me a chance to think about it a little more too.
Absolutely.
Maybe bring a little more substance to the table because we're kind of exploring this as a topic. But anything that's going to impact all behavior, human interaction, all relationships is something worth exploring.
Yes.
Anything that's affecting every person and every interpersonal communication interaction, it's worth 2 parts.
If not every, almost every, dang near every. That's a big word. Forever, always, forever, no one, everyone. I don't like those permanency words. I usually pull them out of people's vernacular or their language when I'm in session with people. I don't like them. But yeah, like every. That's. I think applies here. And again, my eyes just get wide when I think about this stuff and how impactful it is, how much harm it creates. And so we're going to take a deeper dive than I wanted to try to squeeze into this thing on what do you do about this? That's going to be, I'll probably come up with a different title to grab people into this, and we'll do that next week. What do you do about, preventing your behavior? That'll probably be the title, actually, as a matter of fact, right? But I have, don't turn off yet. All right, we got the point. We'll go next week. Here is what happened to me when I re-listened to that episode. And this is like a little bit ago in my head when I was thinking, do we want to do a part 2 or do we want to do this and that and the other? Here's what I thought. We have 2 goals when we're dealing with this stuff. Okay? One is just maintenance and management through this horrible fight. Let's just take marriage, right? Just, how can I come back down? How can I get through this interaction? I'm losing my mind. She or he's losing their mind. We're clearly not being productive. This is a nasty fight. It's bad. The immediate thing is, what do we do with that? How do we deal with that? And I have something that we're going to be able to do. This is what I was going to ad hoc to immediately impact those kind of moments. But the other goal is much more difficult. And that's where we'll spend a lot of time next time. That's what a lot of my show prep was. That's a lot of what we talked about on that episode 163. Yes, I got it. Neil gave me the thumb up. How do you change aspects of what was previously an implicit bias? Talking about all that we've talked about, Matthew, does that sound easy or hard?
Well, I think that's realizing that the problem exists and maybe that it's you're facing it, and then the plan to overcome it's 2 completely different things.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And one can happen like a light bulb. The other is realizing that the issue is there can happen quickly, and then fixing it is the long road.
And I really want to encourage the long road for people. Don't bail out from the effort that you can put into this. Oh my gosh, because it's so worth it. And this is what I see when marriage counseling goes well. People reconstitute an entire family. And I don't want to get too dramatic here, but we can reconstitute an entire community. And I'm going to make a statement that sounds crazy, but there's a lot of crap going on in our country. Republicans and Democrats and the splits that we have, the splice in the middle, and everybody's all polarized. We can reconstitute a country if you feel that we need to through this stuff, I believe. Does that sound like a crazy statement?
That's a pretty big picture that we're painting, but anything's possible.
So let's get back to an immediate effect. There's one word. And it's de-escalation. Okay, de-escalation. So here's what I mean by that. and we got time to kind of go into this, and I'm glad. So this is the immediate goal, and this would give you a lot of hope about. I mean, I don't know if we've painted a little bit of a bleak picture, right? Like, oh my God, I'm out of control. This is bad. It's okay because, by the way, a lot of implicit bias that you have is, by the way, I'll make this point. It's great. Absolutely on point. Totally healthy. The world is a wonderful place. That's your implicit bias. I am a lovable person. These are core beliefs that you might have as a part of, actually, your implicit bias. I don't think I've made that point at all today, have I? The positive nature of this.
No.
Yeah.
No, I think we've painted it in a negative light.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have did that.
So it could be positive or negative.
Absolutely.
Well, why don't we let that be a focus on part 2?
Yeah, I need a pen.
Just to make sure we make a point of that. That implicit bias is, bias. We automatically think negative.
Yeah,
so
we do.
Let's just explore the positive side of it in part 2.
I like that a lot. So the first goal is much more attainable, much quicker, much easier to go with, much easier to attain, and maybe I'll switch just for purposes of switching. We had a few examples. Let's go to parenting. Okay. When I'm talking about de-escalating, I'm talking about get in charge of your heart rate. Right? Get in charge of your blood pressure. Get in charge. Craig Graves awesomely talked about, the stuff that he had. What was it? What is Craig's stuff? You know this stuff. The unbeatable mind procedures and process. And he spent a lot of time teaching us about, those strategies. And he spent a lot of time talking about breathing. Mm-hmm. Right? These are to make your mind unbeatable. Craig taught us in those episodes. That was about a month or two ago. You go back to that one too. These shows really weave in together. When you use that breathing, when you use thought process, when you use simple procedures to de-escalate yourself, you're way more in control. And here's the way it looks like. Little Johnny just did something crazy at school. You're sitting at home, kids at home, and you get the call from the school. Have you ever gotten a nasty call from a school?
I'm sure I have.
Have you?
Nothing specific.
Your kids are awesome, though.
They're well behaved.
Yeah.
In general.
I have definitely gotten a call. Love you, Aaron and Adam. I love you guys. But the reality of it is I've gotten those calls and I have lost my mind. When I get that call and when I'm in the middle of being all worked up and heated and worried and truth is afraid, like we talked about, when that fear is hitting me, is that the time that I need to go to little Johnny and have a conversation with him about what the teacher just told me at school on the phone?
No. Never punish when you're angry.
Right?
Never.
Not a good idea. Stop.
Let the heart rate get back down.
It's got to come down.
Get a level mind, then you can address the situation.
Go take a walk. Use your energy to explode into a workout. Go hit yoga. Go listen to music. These are de-escalation practices. Craig would tell you, go for a 20-minute episode if you've built that skill of box breathing. He told us a lot about that when he was on with us. That de-escalates you. That brings you down. That makes you sane again so that you could explicitly go through the process of trying to teach a kid a life lesson at a very valuable time because something big just happened, right? Do you see how powerful that is? Unfortunately, the reality of it is, what do you think a lot of people do?
Oh, I think the conscious decisions of most people, they don't realize any of this.
No.
I would imagine. If you haven't been taught this or you don't realize it, it's difficult to respond.
And I'll tell you what,
because everything inside of you tells you to react.
Yes, I'm teaching this. I know about this, and I'm going to make the confession that I have not followed this 100% of the time.
Well, who of us have 100% of the time?
No.
But realizing, just because I know I was taught that, to never punish when you're angry. I know there's techniques and you can look at it in a lot of different ways, but just keep it that simple. Don't punish when you're angry.
So to wet your whistle, it was interesting. I was just debating in my head, and I just looked. We have another minute or two, few minutes, that I want to go at it to demonstrate in a cultural way how powerful this can be. And they talked about this on that Science Versus that I thought was pretty cool. And they specifically looked at police officers and shootings and how that worked. And I'll bravely go into that world because I believe in mental health being in the middle of it. And I think it can be helpful for us to understand what's going on. Instead of remember what I said that other goal was? Doing these trainings. What was that cultural training again? I keep on blanking on it.
The sensitivity training.
The sensitivity trainings and the different things that have kind of gone on to help people do that first goal. Change your thought process. Change the way you see the world. Holy cow, we ain't doing that in a conference, y'all. You can spend a week in a conference to try to do that. This is a long-term involved process, and they made that point at the end of the show. And instead, we want to do this de-escalation practices. We want to do this de-escalation in policies and procedures and whatnot. And the example that they used, because he was looking at some research, if I remember, because I just listened to it this morning. They looked at a lot of police shootings. Do you know when a lot of police shootings happen? Is on chase situations. Run and chase, run and chase, run and chase. Report after report after report, run and chase. These things build you up. You're chasing a criminal down, and your adrenaline is pumping, and you are absolutely wired. Can you imagine being in a high-speed car chase? I ain't been in that situation, and I'm not going to claim I understand it. Other than what I'm saying now, they suggested to make a policy change that, of course, not in a life-death situation. That's more, rapid pace and speed. But when you have the opportunity after you've chased and you've subdued the person, they said the policy is literally to count to 10. And they suggested that through pretty solid research, it seemed, that decreased the use of physical force by 23% in this particular study that they looked at. That spoke volumes to me when I'm looking at all the psychological realities here. Simply count to 10. You're running, you're after the criminal. I'm going to get this guy. I got to get this guy. I can't believe this guy's putting me in danger. Oh my gosh, he's putting all these people in danger. And you're after him, and then you get there, and you're like, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to take him out. I have to take him down. 4, 5, 6. Why? Are we okay? 7, 8. I don't want to kill this guy. I don't want to take him down. 8, 9, 10. It's okay. Put your hands behind your back. Let's do what we got to do here. They probably did a better job describing that. But if you do some deep breathing, calm yourself down, have an agreement between you and your wife, we're going to have a conversation when we're both agreeable to do this. How much better do you think that's going to go than if you just go at it in the middle of talking about like we're, $7,000 in debt and I don't know what to do and I'm afraid of this and now we're going to talk about how we're going to spend money. Doesn't go very well. You all right?
I am.
Doesn't go very well. Mm-hmm. So de-escalation is the goal. Calm yourselves down when you're dealing with something that's traumatized you, when you're dealing with something that's going on in your marriage, when you're dealing with something that you're dealing with your kids. And I want to end on the idea that there is so much hope here for us to be able to be much more in management control of all the automatic processes that we want to get engaged with. And next week, we're going to talk about that more involved process and some things to do that bigger second goal. All right. Have I hurt your brain? Mine's hurting.
It's a lot to think about. No, you haven't hurt my brain. It's plenty to think about. I'm not researched the studies and all like you have, but this impacts everybody. So it's just something to explore further. And I love the idea of thinking of the positive aspects of it.
Yeah.
In part 2.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that out. I missed it, and we will definitely have that as a part of a different title than what we did here today, which is why do we believe what we believe? And maybe we'll title it "Why Do We Do What We Do?" Right? Because those are really so closely tied in conjunction with each other. So, y'all have a great week. We're cold in the winter here, so stay warm out there. And if you're in a warm place, I'm jealous of you. Take care. Have a good week, everybody.
Thank you.